Hello, welcome toy reelers, toy fans, friends and collectors. I am going to talk you through this awesome behind the scenes today on how we shot this awesome Galactus photograph, and I'm going to take you through the camera and lighting setup. As you can see here, it's sort of like a orbital space station manned by humans. I'll show you what humans we're talking about in a minute. And basically, it comes under siege by Galactus, and then obviously coming to the aid and rescue of the inhabitants and workers on this station. We have the fabulous Fantastic Four. So it's a pretty basic concept, really. I made the choice to incorporate 1/18 scale dioramas, primarily the Joy Toy mech maintenance structures. You can probably see down here as well as here. And this worked in beautifully, in my opinion, with the Marvel Universe 3/4 inch figures. So you can see I have a couple of them here. Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, Johnny Storm in the clutches of Galactus, aka the Human Torch. I have Sue Storm, aka Invisible Woman, and in flight pose here, Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, and he's about to plow into Galactus. Not sure if he's particularly successful. And up here I have a Herald, the Silver Surfer himself. So you can see in this entire piece a little frame storytelling of what's actually transpiring in the photograph itself. Now, down here is the figure that initially I was going to use a whole bunch of them for. And these are the mech maintenance crew kits that you can buy from Joy Toy. The main focus really is Galactus, as you can see up here. That's the main focus, right? So without overcomplicating the composition, several artistic decisions were made to kind of scale back the composition. So my initial layout was to have all of these crew personnel, there's about 6 of them in the B kit, either running away or collapsed or injured on the scene. But I later changed my mind because, it was very cluttered and busy. And as I said before, the main attraction here is Galactus himself, supported by the cast of the Fantastic Four. Now, this keeps the right amount of motivated activity balanced and shot, and it does draw your attention to this wonderful hunk of plastic. Well, so the sense of scale is very important, and that being said, I think the Marvel Universe figures were the go as far as choosing whether I would use 6-inch or 3/4 inch figures. I will at some point incorporate and use 6-inch figures. But for this particular piece, I wanted to use a smaller scale figure. The camera I'm using here is a Sigma FPL full frame high megapixel count camera. And mounted on that camera is the Laowa 24mm f14 probe lens in the Cine version. It's a wonderful macro lens. I think does a terrific job of minimizing compression, and the high f-stops keeps more details in focus, thus I think making everything more discernible and certainly more lifelike. Okay, so when you're shooting something like this, you don't really want a lot of compression, and you want to make things look more real. I find that sometimes shooting with a shallower depth of field can actually make things look smaller. Even though it creates more depth, it can certainly give you the impression that you're shooting miniatures. So this lens here is actually really ideal. So in this photo, I'm using a total of 5 light sources. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do toy photography. Normal household lamps and small consumer battery-powered LEDs will actually do the job just fine. It really just comes down to how and where they're being utilized, and more importantly, just understanding basic lighting fundamentals. Okay, so let's go through the list first, and I'll tell you then how each fixture was being utilized. In this entire scene, we have the Filex Matrix RGBW bicolor that is actually underneath the trestle table, and it's actually flooding the back wall. That's in RGBW mode, so that's actually in orange. So you have different hues, so red, green, blue, and it gives you an entire color spectrum of all sorts of colors that you can dial in to give you that kind of look. So that brings out the orange, and that's set for that, and then that basically floods the back wall to give you that gradient. You can see here there's a slight gradient, and it's exactly what I want. I want to create that gradient to give you that nice warm tone. So like I said, with the juxtaposition as well, I don't want to have a messy background or a very complicated background. I could easily use elements in the background by projecting some sort of background in there, whether it's a skyline or even buildings, or even the moon and the stars or planets, whatever it is. But I chose to keep it simple because of all this stuff that's going on in the foreground. And then we also have the Dito Light DL-H4 150 watt Fresnel spotlight. It's less popular these days due to the need for a traditional quartz halogen lamp, but the color rendition, in my opinion, is still second to none. So that's the DL-H4 150 watt Fresnel spotlight. And what I'm trying to achieve with this light here is to create a flare. And if you look at the photograph, if I bring the light down here, you can start seeing how this is beginning to flare, right? So if I bring it to a lower angle, I'm trying to create a practical light as if that light was coming from the top of, or the underneath of this structure here. So sometimes it's nice to incorporate practical effects in your scenes, and that's what that spot is doing. And it's also backlighting the thing over here, to some degree also creating the separation for Galactus himself. Okay. Next on the list, we have newer technology. We have here, it's the iFootage SL1 60DN fully dimmable daylight LED. It's very small and compact, minimal power draw, very cool to the touch with, very accurate color rendering, so what they call CRI. Actually, ironically, I use this as my key light, even though it's one of the cheaper fixtures in this entire setup. Attached to this is the softbox with a honeycomb. And the softbox creates a very large light source, and it wraps around, you can see here, the entire figure itself. And because this is a larger figure, you want a larger light source. What the honeycomb does, though, is it just directs light in the right areas, so that I can then separate. You can see some of the orange light in the background and not have it wash the back wall, because I'm still using the back wall to create the illusion of warm colors. So that's the key light. Up here we have the Lytra Pro bicolor flicker-free LED fixture, another mouthful. Extremely small, extremely compact, Bluetooth compatible, very easy to get in tight spaces if you want to light a very small specific area. And you can see why I've got that coming over a C-stand with a boom arm, and that is kicking the back of Silver Surfer. So I have the key light coming from here, but I also want to sort of separate him from the background and create all this backlight highlights, because in post I'll remove all those stands over here. You can see he's been mounted by a makeshift flight stand attached to an actual microphone stand, and what that light's going to serve to do is create the highlights, and then we're going to also composite some dust trails in the back, and also create some power orbs around his hands as well. So that kind of creates that effect. And last of all, I have here, down here, a very compact little guy. It's called the iFootage HL1 C4 RGBW compact light with adjustable color, lots of adjustable color temperatures, is Bluetooth compatible as well. It's better known as a light, a compact light for vloggers and content creators. It has 17 color effects inside, and also a magnet on the back of the fixture, so you can essentially attach it to any metal surface and it'll stick on the back of it, so it's certainly very handy. As I was actually using the remote shutter controller, I use this so that I'm not actually physically touching the camera, and I can trigger the camera from here and take the shot. Because I'm shooting at a slower shutter speed, I don't want to be creating any vibrations on that camera. So what I did for the shot actually is hold this with my right hand, trigger the camera, and then up here, just to get the right amount of exposure on the right hand side of Galactus, I was literally holding the light like this and throwing just a certain amount of light out of frame to fill in the right side of his face. So the main key light's coming from here. You have contrast, but sometimes your contrast ratios also have to, can be something where you might want to fill in slightly because you don't want this side to be too dark. So that's what this light's being used for. So, it's all the tiny little spot details and highlight details that you can add to your scene. There's so many fine details and so many interesting details and nuances in lighting that can create more drama and contrast in your image. The last thing I want to say is that I've deliberately chose a darker trestle table. There's several things you can do, and one little tip is if you want to light your shadows from underneath, then you certainly can use lighter colored trestle tables, and what that does is actually reflects light and bounces light upwards. But here I wanted to create, like I said, a lot of shadow. So by the same token, the diorama bases were grayish, sort of the tarmac grayish color. So I wanted that to blend in, but I also wanted to create negative fill so that I can create all these darker patches of shadow that you see on the figure, okay? And not necessarily fill all the dark areas. So that acts like a negative fill, and it blends in also with the diorama itself. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, click the notification button, like, share, write down your comments, give us some ideas in terms of what else you'd like to see coming up on our channels. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and happy collecting.